What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And as far as NFL offseason goes, we are at one of my favorite points of the offseason where we talk about predictions for the upcoming season. And today we're going to be doing our division predictions for the AFC North. And we're going to go division by division as we close in on the NFL Week 1 date, which I think is September 8th, something like that. But today we're doing the AFC, something like that. But today we're doing the AFC North, Browns, Steelers, Ravens, Bengals. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing today?
I'm good. I had a good 4th. I went camping down by Mormon Lake in northern Arizona, which was very peaceful. I bought the bug vacuum gun. I think I've discussed this on the podcast before, that I have a gun that sucks bugs into a jar. So I brought that to the campsite and just had a ball.
Cook.
I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. I'm always amazed by fireflies, dude. I think that's such a crazy bug.
There's so much beauty on the planet. It's that's one that really makes
that
you
one really moves
that.
me.
That really does move
Fireflies
me.
went crazy with fireflies.
They did, and there's a lot of bugs that they did not go crazy with that I learned do not exist in northern Arizona, like ticks. I was walking around in the woods and I wasn't worrying about any ticks or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to say that they don't exist up here, but they're not nearly as common. Mm-hmm. So that was nice. Played some games.
Nature did not go crazy with mosquitoes either.
But it's been super weird here for the 4th because it's so dry that I didn't hear a single firework the entire 4th.
Really?
You can't light them off. Yep, did not hear one. It was so bizarre. Last night I was sitting here.
Oh.
It's the 5th today. Last night was the night of the 4th. Did not hear a single blast.
Huh.
Wow. Usually we have fireworks on the 3rd here.
Yeah, usually it's like the whole week. It sounds like an active war zone. You know, that's what I'm used to in the Midwest with the fireworks. But here in northern Arizona, I think I heard one the entire week.
It's not like that in Cincinnati. I can promise you.
I believe it.
People are nuts. Honestly, it's really cool. Instead of going to like one fireworks show, there's a park called Bellevue Park that has like a view over the whole city, and you can see like everyone setting off all their fireworks, and you can see them like across the river. It's really sweet. So that's where I went. But yeah, gotta love 4th of July.
Living in a big city is better for fireworks watching, not going to any sanctioned show. But if you can just find some sort of overlook and just look out over any big city.
But here's the problem. Then there's people who go to the overlook and set off the fireworks there. And like,
come on, guys.
I don't trust them at all, man. Like, I don't trust anybody setting off fireworks near me. And you've got like kids like kind of messing with them. And it's like, dude, that makes me so nervous. But overall, it was fine.
How was your birthday, Matt? I know that was on the 4th as well.
No, it was good. You know, just did typical 4th of July stuff. Blaiden and a couple of other people went out to the Reds game with me over the weekend, which they lost. And I believe they've won like every other game.
Yeah, it's the one game that I go to, they lose. But I did get to see a grand slam.
Hey,
so
that's pretty cool.
First MLB game, grand slam. Doesn't get much better than that, unless they won.
No, they won the 3 before that game and the 3 after. That's messed up in my opinion. But they won on my birthday, so I forgive them. Outside of that, though.
Yeah. Did you guys see Brett Coleman's post of the fireworks that are like literally right outside his like apartment window? And they're like, they're like at eye level with him. And I'm like, that's so because you never see fireworks from that angle.
No, so when you've got a sick ass apartment like he does,
right,
and like penthouse of LA, Brett, can I please get $1? You probably get to see cool shit like that instead of at Yugo Flagstaff or wherever else you're at. Not to dox myself.
Yeah, you talk about it sounding like an active war zone. So Matt knows where I live. I live right by a golf course, and they always set up fireworks.
We're all doxing ourselves. This is a good start.
But they always set off fireworks every year right by this golf course. So like literally we just go out my backyard and we can see fireworks right above our house. It like you can, my dogs hate it. It's like you can literally feel the house shake. Like car alarms are going off all down the street because you're that close to the fireworks. It's like that. It's actually active war zone shit.
I think my philosophy with fireworks is if you can't beat them, join them. So if you hate fireworks, you might as well go out and have the fun of lighting them yourself, because there's no use in complaining about it. It's going to happen. So I
have the exact opposite opinion. It's like, I'm going to let the other people set off what is like slowly becoming like just point blank, like missiles. Yard, 3 or 4 football fields away from me. That works. I'm not going to go and buy them and set them off myself, dude. I'll just look. I think that's way preferable.
I'm saying if you like looking at the fireworks, that's okay. But there are people who just do not like fireworks at all, and some are for valid like PTSD reasons, and some are for they just think they're
had firework injuries.
And then, not from firework injuries, but I know some people who are.
Oh, yeah.
If you just don't like fireworks and don't like how noisy they are, my advice is if you can't beat them, join them and go off and just, you can do some little ones or something. And because I do see the appeal in just blowing stuff up. But anyway.
We're supposed to talk about football today, I think,
Not just 4th of July dialogue.
Yeah, so true. So do you guys want to hop right in? Get started?
Yeah, the AFC North doing what today?
The AFC North, maybe the most competitive division.
I think so.
In the NFL coming into the season.
It's the most competitive division. I think it's the most interesting division.
It's hot. It's gonna be hot. So it's gonna be a pretty tough one, I think, to rank. But I think we've each compiled a list of a ranking for this division. 1 through 4, and I think we're just going to go team by team and discuss where we have each of those teams ranked in our rankings. So no consensus today. I know we've been doing consensus positional rankings and stuff, but that's not what we're doing today. We just have our own separate list that we will discuss. So let's start off with the Cleveland Browns. Why don't we? Made a lot of moves this offseason, a lot of moves. Sadly, I don't know if that's going to be enough to put them to number 1 in this division, just because Deshaun Watson was so bad last year.
I mean, that's the big question. It's like, that's where you have to start is how is Watson going to recover? And I think it's really hard to project, in my opinion. You go and watch him last year, and it's like the timing is off on a lot of this stuff. And like, he's just like a tick late, and the mechanics aren't like quite as sharp as they have been before. And that's all stuff to be expected. Like, that's not super shocking considering, he hadn't played, he hadn't practiced with the team. He gets kind of thrown in there. It's like, okay, all that makes sense. How much better is that going to get? In my opinion, I would have a really hard time believing that it just never gets any better and it's that bad. And with an extra off season of like actually being with the team, he doesn't look significantly closer to what he was with the Texans. But how much that improves, I think you're just totally guessing. I think you're totally guessing. So.
It's like, is he going to get back to like 2019 form where he's like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Probably not. But you would imagine it's better than looking like he has no idea what he's doing out there. And also the play calling was really bad during that stretch too. I mean, they were running, I don't even know what they were calling most of the time. I think it was a lot of like triple option. It was such a weird offense that they were running.
Here's the thing with Watson and what it was last year. You're right, Matt, that it was a tick late. It was more than a tick late.
Yeah, it was bad. He held the ball, I think, longer than anybody on average, right?
Yes, that's exactly the stat I had written down, Matt. He held the ball for 3.13 seconds before throwing last season. No other quarterback was above 3.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy how long he was holding the ball. And even Fields, and he was holding it over 3 seconds before a throw. Fields would hold it for a long time and he would run it. So taking out those plays, Watson held the ball before a throw longer than any other qualified quarterback last year by a decent margin. he looked strong, like physically. He looked like he could play make. He was breaking tackles at, I think, a pretty insane rate. I don't have the stats to back that up. But when I was watching him in his return last year, the amount of times he would hold it and break a tackle in the backfield was, I guess, impressive. He shouldn't have been breaking all those tackles.
It was noticeable because, like, Brissett, it was like plays that I was like, okay, Brissett's not making that play.
Right.
And
Brissett can't extend plays like Watson can, but Watson wasn't necessarily extending plays and creating explosives. First of all, like, he only had a handful of like big time throws in those moments, despite the fact that they were happening so often. It wasn't like Josh Allen when he breaks the pocket and late in the down, the fireworks are just beginning. A lot of it was like a lot to do a little. Like, he was doing all this to, not make a play, which is also bad. And like you said, Matt, I thought his mechanics looked a little sloppy as well. And he was kind of herky jerky and all over the place. And I guess I got to watch more.
He'd like hop around sometimes.
Yeah. And he's kick his leg way up when he threw it. He'll throw it and his leg will go like 5 feet up in the air in the back. Like, I'm not totally sure that's the most consistent way to deliver a football. But yeah, he really has to get more comfortable with game speed again, because I think that's the big thing. And I think that'll get better, but it's legitimately, it's him and Fields right now at the bottom of all these stats in terms of like pocket presence and holding onto the ball too long. And that's just not what he was before at all. So yeah, who knows where he'll get back to.
Right. So that's the big question mark on offense. Otherwise, the Browns actually are really well built offensively. The offensive line's good. You're getting Ethan Pochik back. So the center position, that was the one problem they had on their offensive line last year, is they didn't have they had lost like all of their centers to injury.
Well, that wasn't there was one other problem, which I'll talk about, but
okay.
The other problem was their. Yes, I'm talking about their left tackle, who was terrible last season. I'm telling you, Jed Wills is not good, but he was not good last year.
I'm glad you noticed that too. But like, everything else is good. The Nick Chubb, best running back in football. Their run game is going to be effective. I think the receiving group is going to be good. Like, you look at Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore. Say what you want about Donovan Peoples-Jones, but like, if he's the third option... What do you
want to say about... I want to talk to you about Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yes.
Do you not like Donovan Peoples-Jones?
Well, how much do you like Donovan Peoples-Jones is the first question I want to ask.
I think he's a really strong, like, just big-time playmaker. He makes good plays at the catch point, but he's not going to be your wide receiver 1. If he's the wide receiver 3 on this team, I think that's really good. Right? Like, I don't have but like, I also don't think that like Cedric Tillman is going to be like coming in and just like taking his job unless he's making those same types of plays.
I kind of agree. I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones is a bad depth piece at all.
Yes.
He's like Higgins from like.
Whoa.
No, not T. Hollywood.
Okay.
Rashard Higgins.
Okay, you scared me.
T. Higgins.
You scared me there for a second, Blaiden.
Yeah, I realized I needed to like clarify.
I knew who you were talking about.
Yeah,
I did not know Rashard Higgins.
I did not. I cannot lie. I got a little scared for a second there. Okay. Yes, he is a good depth piece. I think there's a possibility that Cedric Tillman is better than him or Elijah Moore. I would say, not that I think Elijah Moore and Peoples-Jones are necessarily terrible, but I do think they're like replaceable. Elijah Moore, I liked his draft profile coming out of Ole Miss. He can be a crafty route runner. I think he's got impressive hands, if not a big catch radius, because he's small. But last year he was near the bottom of the league in yards per route run, period. He was out there doing cardio a lot of the time, wasn't really locked into running these routes necessarily. He was. He's running around doing nothing. He's a nice prospect, but he got traded for less than they drafted him for.
Right. After
a couple years where, he was he banged up? At any rate, there was bad quarterback play. So you didn't get like an amazing chance for him. But they shipped him out of there. They weren't really happy with him, and he wasn't really happy with them. It was a bad match. So right now he's like, could be something, but he hasn't really been a positive force so far. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is like a strong catcher, and I think a good physical receiver who can he's got a pretty good yards per route run and a pretty good yards per catch. Like they kind of use him as a big body, deep threat, almost like a really discount T Higgins maybe, or a really discount Mike Williams, where it's like, he's kind of a deep threat, but not in the speedy way, in the like ball winning down the field way. But if Cedric Tillman could kind of be a blend and give you a little bit more of each, like I think that he's got a real path for playing time over one of those guys. Yeah. I think the receiving core is fine because Njoku is fine. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay.
And Amari Cooper is like an okay one who gives you 1,100 yards every single year, nothing more, like nothing less. Yeah. He's well-rounded, but not necessarily the best at any particular area, I would say. And they've got like a fine number 2 and a fine number 3 and a fine tight end. It's just like at all of their slots, it's like good enough.
Which
and that's fine, right?
It's fine, but having explosive playmakers is a big deal. Guys who can. It's got to be. That's a position you'd like to do more than check off the box with. I feel like, and that's one of the negatives of the Browns. Obviously, they have Chubb, but he is a running back. But you can see the path for this Browns offense being really good. It's like, okay, in reality, the idea is that Watson's the playmaker. They, they traded 3 first-round draft picks plus and gave him all that money. And if you throw him with okay receivers, the idea is that should be a good passing offense. If you have that and you have the offensive line and you have the running game, that should be a top 10 offense. That's the idea. But it's not hard to judge, right? Because you don't know how good Watson is.
Right. It's not necessarily worse than it was his last year in Houston when they had like a top 5 passing attack with like Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, right? Like, know that Watson is capable of taking weapons of this caliber and making it a really good passing offense. It's just, it was so bad last year that it kind of makes me hesitant to project it. I mean, we're talking, they scored 27 points in his debut thanks to a lot of turnovers. Then they scored 10, 13, 10, 24 and 14. And I don't have the average of that per game, but there's a couple too many numbers that start with a 1 in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do worry about the offense. I do worry that the offensive line isn't quite the like superpower, like super engine that it's sometimes made out to be. I think it's a good unit, but it's not like Eagles level. When I rewatched it in preparation for this episode, like I thought Bitonio was real good and Teller was all right, and Conklin is all right, and Pochich is
Teller. I thought took a step back a little bit last year.
I didn't love Teller. Like I thought Teller was good, but I don't think Teller was like. They have no future Hall of Famers like the Eagles do. Like they've got Lane Johnson and Kelsey.
Bitonio's been real good for like 4 years now.
Yeah, Bitonio's been quite good. I don't know if he's been like an all-time type of guard, but he's really solid. I just don't think that line can like mask all. It's not this super line, like this all-time line, or even the best in the league right now. And I think the Ravens line honestly has a chance to be the best in the division with the Browns. Like I don't even think it's that far above the Ravens line. So that doesn't mean it's bad at all. The Ravens have a really good line, but my worry about this team is like the offense was so bad last year. Can you project a jump into a Super Bowl winning offense? And that is kind of where I'm a little hesitant. Like I love Chubb. I love 2019 Watson, I guess, like as a player.
Right.
And I like the offensive line and like maybe, but it was just so bad last year that I kind of think it'll get better, but it's still
right.
It still is a little bit more concerning than it looks on paper, I think, I would say.
And that's just the offense. We didn't even talk about the defense.
We haven't talked about the defense, which I like the moves they made. I still don't think they're perfect. I'll say this also about the offense real quick. It's hard to, when we're comparing it to the rest of the division, it's hard to have it any higher than 3, no? At least with Watson, even best case scenario, he's the 3rd best quarterback in this division because it's that good. So I definitely, it's like, I do think Watson's going to play a lot better. Like I have a really hard time seeing it panning out where he just like falls out, like he really doesn't get any better, but it's in a tough division. It's hard to move him up. As far as the defense goes, I think the defensive line still is not great. I don't disagree that like I like Zadarius Smith and I like Tomlinson and I like Garrett obviously, but I think their depth is really not that good still. I think you're relying on a lot of like rotational pieces that haven't really proven. Like, obviously, we're part of a really terrible run defense. We know they're going to be playing a lot of nickel, meaning that a lot more is going to be on those linebackers, who I still don't think are that great at run defending. And Schwartz I was watching an interview of him talking about how defensive line play is almost like MLB pitching, is what he said, where you have to rotate in and out a lot. So we know those depth players are going to get a lot of playing time. So I think it's going to be better than it was last year. Shocker. But I still don't think that their run defense is going to be like next level.
I kind of disagree. I think their front four, they took care of pretty well. And when I look at it compared to the other front fours in this division, it stacks up pretty favorably, at least. I don't know exactly off the top of my head where I would put it amongst the league leaders, but you've got a guy who is a game wrecker by himself in Garrett. And then you've got Za'Darius and Okoronkwo, which is pretty good. You've got Tomlinson, you've got Ika, you've got Perrion Winfrey, who was a decent pick last year. And I don't know. I think that and then you've got Jordan Elliott. Like, I think that there's enough there where you can have a pretty solid, 1, 3, 5, maybe a 6-man rotation that's pretty solid and stacks up with anybody. I mean, Za'Darius Smith and Garrett are a pretty good duo, and Dalvin and Ika, or whoever you want to rotate down. I'm sure it won't be Ika at the majority of snaps. It'll probably be a rotating kind of cast of characters at nose tackle, or maybe it'll be Dalvin and a rotating cast of characters at 3 tech, I should say. I don't know. I kind of like the front four. I do. The linebackers, I could agree they're not the greatest, but I don't know. Their front seven is
Delpit. So
yeah, there's no one besides maybe JOK who like could really be a queen on a chessboard type of player. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah like probably is more a Bishop. I don't know. He's a little small to be super well-rounded, but I like him decent enough.
Yeah.
I think that linebacker play really matters for the run defense. And it's like, yeah, probably would take their front four over like the Ravens or maybe over the Bengals, but I like both of those teams' front fours, and I like their linebackers. And it's like, we're talking about a team that has like Roquan and Patrick Queen, who I think is pretty solid. I just don't really trust this team to be fantastic run defense wise. I like their secondary pretty decently. I think they're going to be a lot better on defense, and I guess I'm overall positive about them on D. But I don't look at it as, well, they added these 2 guys to the defensive line. That was their biggest need. Now they're going to be like a top 5 defense.
Yeah. I don't think they'll be quite top 5. I mean, they weren't in our top 10, but I think they'll be a positive force. I do. I think that they've got enough of juice in pass rush and enough depth in the corner room with with Ward, Emerson, and Newsome to play. They could play man. They can run games and get pressure. And I think that out of all the teams in the league, they've kind of got the cover one formula that I could actually trust with their corner room and pass rush. I think the guys they've got can make that an effective strategy. And that's a hard defense to blow assignments on, right? I think that my idealized team is like, we'll just play man coverage all the time. Like, I'd rather do that. It's easier to remember. You got your guy. Yeah, literally. That's what I would love to do. Or Bill Belichick even, when he had Gilmore and JC Jackson, he would just be like, yeah, well, we'll be calling cover one, and they have the best defense. Like, if he thinks it, then I think it too, because he's smarter than me and he's the smartest one ever. So I think they've got the guys to potentially do something like that and be a pretty decent group providing health. But yeah, I agree. Like, up the spine, the linebackers, the safeties, like, is it good enough there to be a top unit? What if Newsome and Emerson don't really progress? That's another question. It's not a lock to be great, but I'm optimistic, I would say. I'm actually more optimistic about. I think that it could sneaky be reversed, that the offense is the problem and the defense is pretty good, because that's kind of how it was at the end of last year. But that's not how it's being talked about.
It's not unthinkable. But I think the expectation for the Browns should be an above average offense and an above average defense, right?
I think the expectation,
that's the most realistic expectation.
I think the expectation is they compete for the division and they make the playoffs. I mean, you traded all these picks, you're getting the full year for Watson, you splurged in free agency. If you're not, I mean, I think even just getting a wild card berth and like losing round 1, like as the 7th seed, would be a pretty big disappointment. I think you're here to win the whole thing, at least the division, the Super Bowl. You know, you don't have to win all that to be a successful season, especially for a team like Cleveland. But I think that they
my
should compete.
As far as the roster goes is above average.
Hey man, you make the Super Bowl, that's like the 3rd time it's ever happened. Or you make the playoffs, it's like the 3rd time it's ever happened.
In my lifetime. So
I'll take what I can get. You got to take what you can get. Overall, yeah, I think that's the expectation. But I think in this division, it's going to be a little bit tougher than they anticipated. I think Watson is going to be a little worse than they anticipated, even though he was better. Or even though he's going to be better than last year. And I think they finish like 3rd in a good division.
That's where I have them. I see them as a team where the ceiling is there, and I see them as a team where the floor is there too. I think I think they're one of the more wide range outcome teams in the NFL.
Yep, I agree. They could totally come out because they're pretty stacked on paper. They totally are, but you can't ignore that this was a unit scoring like 17 points a game when Watson came back last year. And like all of those problems could still probably present themselves. Although it will be nice to be able to run 11 personnel without Anthony Schwartz being out there or something.
Oh my God.
Who's number 12? Do you know who number 12 is?
Michael Woods.
I don't know who that receiver was, but I'm like, a lot of the times they would run Harrison Bryant and David Njoku out there as opposed to their 3rd wide receiver because they didn't like their 3rd wide receiver very much by the end.
It was really bad last. Like there was a lot of people that were calling for Stefanski to be fired, and I'm just like, bro, he had nothing to work with. I don't know what
the option running that he was doing, because there was a lot of like, oh, we're going to keep Watson back and we're going to option it. And it's like, that just wasn't as effective as the under center stuff they've been doing. Like, I get that it's nice that you have Watson and you can do that now, but at least last year, he was not an effective enough runner to justify moving away from what has made them such a good rushing attack the previous several years, which is that downhill under center power stuff.
Yeah. Nick Chubb's just like more effective, I think, from that. Like when he gets like a
great
little bit of a
head
of steam. Jerome Ford.
That's what I'm saying, man. Also, I'm looking at their depth chart. I think their quarterback room behind Watson is Josh Dobbs, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Kellen Mond. I think that's
it's hilarious.
Kind of a legendary unit right there, man. I think all those guys are kind of fun.
DTR, Mond, Watson, and who is the other one?
Josh Dobbs.
4
QBs on the roster, all guys that people know.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that the 4th guy on the roster is someone as famous as Kellen Mond.
I wouldn't say they're like household names, but like maybe
like people a 3rd round pick not that long ago.
I almost say he's like top of the 3rd, man. I get it too.
At least the people that listen to this podcast will know who he is. You know. So we all have the Browns at 3rd here. Today's episode of Stay Hot is brought to you by our friends over at Oakley. Express your style and build a look that's made for you. Look, man, Theo always talks about how Oakley's literally changed the world around you. It's unbelievable. Just the colors are different. Theo, tell us about just how crazy these colors are.
Yes, I love the tint that these things have. I've never worn a pair of sunglasses quite like them. Everything is more vibrant, and I thought that was really a pleasant experience when I first put them on. The other thing about Oakley's that I like is that they're very durable. I accidentally dropped mine and they fell down kind of a steep ravine and bounced off some rocks, but they stayed together. So super durable, filter out light really well. They're not too light. They're not too dark. Nothing bad to say about Oakleys. I never thought that I'd own a pair, but now that I do, I see why I get the hype.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine having him without Theo. Did you say you dropped him down a ravine?
Oh yeah, no. I'm bird watching
Minecraft with his Oakleys on.
I go bird watching, and sometimes I'll take my glasses off to look through the binoculars, and sometimes these locations are on ravines or cliffs or some other place that a bird might dwell.
I guess that's fair. Regardless,
but
Oakley is changing the game they're changing the game, man. For Theo's bird watching, for, if you're golfing, if you're running, or maybe you just want to look like your favorite athlete, Lamar Jackson or Justin Jefferson. Regardless, you need to have a pair of Oakleys today. Here at Stay Hot, we're all about look good, feel good, play good. That's why Oakley is the perfect partner for us. We don't leave our house in the morning without our Oakleys. And when summer just around the corner, that means you need to upgrade your sunglasses game instantly. Did you know that Oakley even offers prism lens technology? Now, what is that, you might ask? Well, it's a proprietary technology unique to Oakley, perfectly suited for both peak performance and everyday settings. Want to know more? Well, you can head on over to Oakley.com and do your own research. And while you're there, go ahead and get yourself a pair of everyday sunglasses that'll be sure to change your look for the better. When you wear Oakley, there really is more than meets the eye. And don't just trust me, don't just trust Theo, don't just trust Matt. Try it for yourself. I've worn a lot of sunglasses. We didn't used to have Oakleys before, but now that we have them, man, we can assure you they're not only the best looking, but the best quality out there. So head on over to Oakley.com for more information today. So if we want to move on to the next team that we have here listed is the Pittsburg Steelers. They're getting TJ Watt back. That's enough of an impact for something to be excited about. But I guess they're going to have the same big question that the Browns have, which is quarterback. You need to see a big step up from Pickett. But
Pickett's got some similar, maybe not that similar problems to Watson, but he's got to kind of clean it up too, which is not super shocking for a rookie. And it was not all bad for him. There's a lot of times where he's willing to roll out and push it down the field, and he was more willing to throw into tight windows, and that's all good stuff. You want him to be aggressive and kind of a gamer. You don't want him to just not have that in the bag. I mean, he was a first round pick for a reason, but there's a line between willing to get out of the pocket and create and being antsy, and he definitely crossed over into that antsy category. There's also times where he's missing out on reads and not staying within the system because of that. And that's not, again, super shocking for a rookie. And I do think he got a little bit better as the year went on. Obviously they went 5-1 in their last 6. And I don't know if I want to read too much into that. But a lot of this offense comes down to him growing as a second year player.
Yeah, I think I saw the exact same thing you did, Matt, with kind of you drop back and immediately panic. It wasn't Sandstrong in the pocket. It's constricting, but it's still possible to hang in there. And he's hanging in there and reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mm-hmm. He was 36 out of 40 quarterbacks in percentage of dropbacks that happened in less than 2.5 seconds. So quick dropbacks, 36 out of 40. And he was 4th overall in the amount of throws outside the pocket on a straight drop back. So that indicates that he was supposed to hit the top of his drop and make a throw, but instead he broke the pocket and scrambled. So he was doing that more than just about anybody else. He was holding the ball just more than anyone else. And one thing that really impressed me about him was actually his accuracy on the move. I thought he was dead on basically all the time. I watched the last 3 or 4 games from the Steelers season, and it got to the point where I couldn't believe it. It was he's every time he's scrambled, he's kind of put it on the money. And then I kept watching, and the throws would continue to be difficult, and he'd continue to be on the move, and he'd continue to be extremely accurate. And I looked it up, and what was it? He was 4th in on target rate when throwing with moving feet, according to Sports Info Solutions. That is crazy, right? So
he's good at that stuff. I just wish he wouldn't. Maybe that's part of the reason why he goes to it so quickly.
He reminds, yeah. And he reminds me a little bit of like a cowardly Russell Wilson from his like Seattle days. Because the other interesting thing about Pickett that I found when I was going through his stats was he was the most accurate quarterback on fades and goes in the league. Like he was good on these deep balls to Pickett or Pickens or whoever else. Like when he was in the pocket and throwing it down the sidelines, like it was on the money. When he was rolling out, he was very accurate. Him and Russ were very similar in a lot of their stats, like in terms of where they were throwing from and the areas they were throwing from. The thing is, when Russ was young and in his prime, he was throwing these goes way more often. And when he was outside the pocket, he was like first in average depth of target or top 5 or something like that. Pickett is not quite throwing the same insane shit outside of structure that Russ was in his prime. But it's still kind of the similar thing where it's like he throws a nice deep ball and he's accurate on the move, but he's just abandoning structure way too frequently and it can be a bit inconsistent.
Well, but the question I think you need to ask is it a structure worth staying in?
Yes. I mean, to some extent, yes. I think there's a lot of stick, like one clear out and then 2 guys going underneath. Like it's a lot of that. It's a lot of quick throws. It's not a lot of like hang in there and throw a deep breaking ball, like a big post or a big corner. Like they're not quite that aggressive, but there are goes down the sideline and there are, some concepts, but, and there are times like it's not the most creative passing offense in the entire world because a lot of it is built off of the same running scheme that they run over and over and over again.
Tell us, is Matt Canada as bad as everyone thinks he is?
Yeah, he is.
And I saw some quote while researching this stuff where he's like, we're not changing up what we're doing.
No, he's going to be the same thing.
It's like, that's...
You can tell he runs the same shit over and over. It's split zone. Like, there's going to be motion from the guy in the slot is probably going to go in motion across the formation. And then there's going to be Connor Hayward on the other side of the line working across the line of scrimmage to block the end man. And then there's going to be a zone with a designed cutback. Like that is what is going to happen when they're under center. Like you can call it after charting their game for like a couple drives. You can start to see exactly what they're going to do. When certain wide receivers are on the field, they're on there to do one thing, and that's block. Like you just know what's coming. And I honestly think Najee was running really strong last year. Like Najee, to me, his footwork was real good. He almost reminded me a little bit of like a Bijan Robinson. Like I kind of think Bijan Robinson is more of like a Najee type of prospect than a Saquon type of prospect. Because when I watched Najee, I saw some really, really nice footwork in between like the tackles and in quite tight quarters. For a guy his size, he was really being efficient. Thought he was running well. I thought his vision looked good at the end of last year. I thought he was running strong and running through contact. There's just not quite that burst, that like really explosive burst that I think is missing from Najee Harris.
You know what?
And that's really the only thing preventing him from being like Derrick Henry.
That's really fascinating. That's a fascinating comp because I loved Najee coming out of Bama. I was like, oh, this guy's he's going to be fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. And then he was just like, he was fine.
Yeah.
But like,
I think he does a lot of things well. Like you can have him out on the field. Like he can receive and he can block and he can, run the scheme they want to run. Like he's a good cutback guy and good getting downhill. Well, now he is. He seemed to be okay. There were a couple plays where I was like, he's not good getting downhill, but for the most part, like he was good getting downhill at the end of last year and running strong. So it's like at that, he's almost like a souped up, better comp than Bijan Robinson is like a really kind of souped up AJ Dillon. But at any rate, like I thought Najee was playing really well and was the best player on their offense towards the end of last year. I do worry about the run blocking though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you just look overall at this offense. It's really hard not to say it's going to be last in this division. And I think the takeaway is I'll say, I think Pickett could be pretty good if he improves on things that you could possibly expect, rookie quarterbacks to improve on, but the offensive line is still going to be bad. The play calling is still going to be bad.
Right.
And I don't think Pickett is going to get so good that he overcomes all of that I think that's putting a lot of weight on his shoulders. It isn't fair. And I think for the long term, like health of the Steelers, if you were a Steelers fan, you'd probably prefer that. But I think this is a tough division. Like I said, I think this is probably the worst offense in it.
Yeah, I think Matt Canada really limits their ceiling. I just don't think that this offense, I just can't see this offense rising to the ranks of like a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Like, I think that's almost the blueprint with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pickett. Like, you can, if you really squint your eyes, you can almost kind of see like that trio in Pittsburgh, but like really the off-brand versions. And I just don't think the off-brand versions, although Pickens is a fantastic catch, like contested catch guy, he's just not a very fluid or nuanced route runner right now. Like he's he's someone that you throw it to and trust he's going to come down with it because he can, but that's not quite the blueprint. I think T. Higgins is like a way better separator at this point. Maybe Pickens becomes that, and maybe, I think Deontay Johnson's a really special route runner, but his catch radius is just so small and he has inconsistent hands and he's not like super physical or anything like that. So, he's no Jamar Chase, but I don't know. If you really, really kind of squint, you can see like a discount version of that offense, but I just don't think they have the coordinator, quite the right guys. They don't have the number 5. They don't have the number 1 overall pick and the number 5 overall pick and T. Higgins, right? They have the number 26 overall quarterback and the second round receiver and Deontay Johnson. Like it's just a little bit worse. And I think it's just about, worse than everybody. I don't think Broderick Jones is going to be a positive right away. He was pretty much drafted more because of his athleticism than his results on the field. So
it's an upside pick.
Yeah, it's an upside pick. Sumalo, I think, is going to be an upgrade over Dotson. But like I've said on Twitter and people have gotten mad at me, like an upgrade over Dotson doesn't mean it's all good because Cole and Daniels and the right tackle Okorafor, they're not like elite dudes either. And they had basically just as many issues as Dotson ran into last year. So that entire right side of the line to me is still not quite elite. And the left side of the line with Jones and Sumalo isn't exactly like 2 future Hall of Famers either, most likely. Although I do like Sumalo in that signing.
I don't know. I could see Jones at least bringing it run blocking wise, especially if you get him out in space. I really liked what he showed at Georgia with that. Like he really can move. There's a reason why he's first round draft pick. Don't get me wrong.
He's their only like road grinder, like powerful offensive.
And then
tackle.
hopefully Washington can be like that too. So I see where they went out and tried to go out and improve on that 100%. But I think again, like even if you like Jones, it's a lot of pressure to put on him where it's like, fix the offense now. Can you make this work now?
Hold on though. If we do split zone and you got Darnell coming in motion,
I don't
even want him in motion. I want him play side. I want him replacing Gentry because they'll use a lot of 12 personnel.
You have Broderick play side, right? And then you just motion Darnell, and you have both of them just running with it.
Right. Those, because they bring a lot of Gentry on. Like there's a lot of number 81 out there, and I thought he was like a whatever blocker, but. Yeah, Darnell Washington has a chance to come in with Freiermuth, be in 12 personnel, and block a lot of the time. And then I don't think he can run real routes, Darnell Washington. I think he's too stiff. But can he block for a second, release out, and then be, good on a crosser? Like, yes, he can. So I like that fit as a Gentry replacement, still having Freiermuth out there plenty.
Mm-hmm.
This is an offense where you put on your Oakley glasses, you can see.
Oh my God, it's terrible. Like maybe Calvin Austin is good, but like I just do not like these little gadget wide receivers and how hyped up they get every year. And I just feel like these gadgety fast guys who run a 4.2 just get so hyped on every team. There's like a handful of them in every draft, and they always get. Like Rondale Moore and Wan'Dale Robinson are 2 big ones.
Hold on now. Rondale Moore's good though. Rondale Moore's good though.
Not as a real receiver. Like he's a good yak guy.
He can break a lot of tackles.
I know. I just feel like these guys never quite live up to where they get drafted or the hype, because I feel like they blow up the combine and become these big household names that like because everyone who writes like who won the NFL Combine talks about the little dude who ran a 4.2, and then everyone gets their hopes up, and then it just never, like, I feel like Tyreek is the only dude in that archetype who's like a real great receiver in the league. So maybe there's some Calvin Austin fans who think he can step into that number 3 role, but I would have just kept Sims if I were them. Like, I thought Sims was a fine slot receiver, and now it's like Allen Robinson or Calvin Austin or, whoever else. So I agree, Matt. The receiver depth, if one of the main 2 goes down, I don't know how many more explosives they're creating, because right now they can create explosives out wide. But yeah, if one guy goes down, then it gets real dicey.
It gets really dicey really quickly.
Yeah.
But we should probably move on to the defense. I'm a little bit higher on the defense than the offense. I think most people are. You're getting TJ back. Him and Highsmith have an argument for the best edge rushing duo in the NFL right now.
TJ Watt's doing a lot of work there, I would say. But
I mean, Highsmith he had a good year last year.
He did. I was a little underwhelmed when I watched the Steelers defense with Highsmith, but that might not be a take that's too serious. He was very productive last season.
He was very productive, and he had to be the number 1 for a time. So, and then you've got Hayward as well.
You've got someone who I think is very underrated and someone who really stood out to me upon rewatch, and that is Larry Ogunjobi, number 99. Is real. And he's a nice player. And they also drafted Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin in the 2nd round. So
we're starting to talk about a pretty strong unit. Even if you're lower on Highsmith, it's like, man, there's a lot of pieces there.
Front 4 is scary.
But I'd say the number 1 thing you have to talk about is the cornerbacks. That's my number 1 concern, man. Peterson had a good year last year, but we're starting to get up to the age. I mean, he's going to turn 33 next year or this season, where it's like, dude, that's really pushing it, even for a guy who's, had a great as career as Peterson. And then you've got Porter, who I liked, but had some problems being a little bit stiffer, I think. So when your top 2 guys are a 33-year-old and a rookie who maybe isn't super fluid, I just feel like there's a lot of receivers who they're not going to have a great guy to throw at. And that would be my big concern for them.
Yeah, I'd rather them play some zone and have these guys like walling off dudes and, reading things out with eyes on the quarterback instead of running around with wide receivers. And last year they I thought had a pretty athletic and like fleet of foot secondary, and they were 5th in the percentage of time they called man coverage, and they were 18th in EPA on those calls, and they were actually also 18th in zone calls. So pretty consistently like the 18th best secondary or the 18th best, pass defense, because pass rush factors into that a lot as well. So, which is average. And I think that's kind of what they'll continue to be if they call the right things. Like, I think that Joey Porter Jr., I think that he was definitely worthy of the 32nd overall pick. Oh, yeah. I'll say that. Like, I think that he has enough length, like that's really special, and play strength. And, I think that has the right mindset. And I think that, being the son of an NFL player is going to help him. Like, I don't have really any concerns with him transitioning to the league. And if you've got like those tools with that kind of like brain and willingness to work and all that, which I think he's going to have, I think you could be a pretty good corner, even if you're not like super
100%
fluid. So I think he's going to be good. I think Peterson is going to be good. I just don't want them chasing around guys in man. I kind of want them more rerouting and, making plays that way. And I think if they can call enough of that, and maybe they'll surprise me with man and Joey Porter Jr. will be better than I'm thinking or whatever. But I think it can be, and they've got Minka, who's just obviously like great at literally everything. So I like the pass rush. Hayward is still super, super good. TJ is still super, super good, even though he couldn't really like use power last year when he came back from the pec injury. He was still winning all the time because he's just like that. So if if the linebackers can be we'll see how much linebackers can sabotage a single unit of football, because
this is a thought experiment. This will be the actual experiment of how much do linebackers matter.
Because right now it's a little bit of it's a little bit rough, and it was rough last year, and it was still a pretty good defense even without Watt. So I think,
but they had Flores as like their linebackers coach last year, didn't they?
They did. Well, if he was the linebackers coach, it wasn't a super glowing.
Hey, he did his best, man.
I actually kind of like Spillane sometimes as a run defender, but in coverage, or he was undersized, like fighting through contact, or when an offensive lineman could lay a solid hit on him, it was probably taking him out of the play. And, he wasn't a great coverage guy. And they have someone who's kind of intriguing, which is number 93, Mark Robinson, who played for them a lot at the end of last year. And he's super, super fast and athletic. Like, he's undersized clearly, but the way he moves around, he does not look like other linebackers. He's really, really fast, and he's aggressive as well. But does that equal like good player right now? Not really. So I don't know. We'll see what they can cobble together there. And I think they could still be susceptible to like a linebacker running a curl and just being open, or a tight end running a curl and just being open, or, not very sticky underneath coverage.
Mark Andrews
it should
incident
be
from week 17.
I think that Tomlin has a chance to like hold on to his no losing seasons thing, but do they have a chance to like win the division? I don't really think that they're going to be that good.
He has been fighting for his life with that. It's honest. It's amazing. He's kept it up. He's been bobbing and weaving for a couple of years now.
And last year he got helped out because they were super healthy outside of Watt getting hurt. Like, it seemed like outside of Watt, Minka was healthy the whole year. None of their big guys on offense really missed time. The line at the end of the season were, not the greatest players, but they were the starters at least. It wasn't the backup to these people. It was still Cole and Okafor and whoever else. The names slip me now, but they were really healthy last season, and they barely slipped by. But I could definitely see them regressing a bit in that area, even if Watt is healthy. Like, they didn't have to overcome too many injuries, but they had to overcome one really severe one.
So, I mean, you would expect, getting Watt back should bring the defense up, but even then, I still don't imagine that this team is really making a push. I have them fourth, and they could still have a winning record at 4. That's the crazy. Like, they could be 9-8 and be fourth in this division.
Right, if they can remain healthy again, and I think you can project growth from Pickens and Pickett, and then things should be pretty good compared to last year. But they could also be more injured, or the Browns could be better, or probably will be better. So the Ravens should be better, you would think. Right. But I think that they'll hover around where they were last year, maybe a couple games less, maybe a game more. Could they get to 10 wins? I don't know. That would surprise me. I think they could. I think it's within the realm of possibility if Pickett gets good. Which I don't think is out of the question. But
I just think it'd be wild if we had like a 10-7 Browns, 10-7 Steelers, and then like 2 other teams above 10 wins.
I don't think things will go wrong. Like, it'll be, we've talked about flaws with both the Steelers. We've talked about flaws with the Browns. We'll talk about flaws with the Bengals. We'll talk about flaws with the Ravens. Like, it's not going to be best case scenario for all these teams. But I do think the floor of all these teams is a lot higher in the talent of this division. Like, there are really no easy wins. And however it falls, it falls. But I think the Steelers, I'm the least confident in that they win it. So they're at 4th.
So far, we are in agreement here, which I guess with these first 2 teams isn't totally shocking. Maybe you would have expected me to have the Browns higher, but
It's a good division, but I don't think it's hard to rank.
I think that's fair. Speaking of ceilings and floors, though, the Ravens might. You talk about the Browns having wide range of outcomes. The Ravens have a wide range of outcomes just because they have so many. Lamar has not played a full season in. Sure.
If Lamar's healthy, no, they don't.
If Lamar is healthy, he hasn't played a full season in 3 years.
Okay, well,
Odell hasn't.
I could do that for any QB. It's
right.
like
if Lamar plays the amount of games that we expect Lamar to play, which is like 14 or 13, because it's not like he's always missing full years.
If Lamar plays, they're going to be really, really great.
Yes, I agree. And I do think he will be healthier because I think a lot of his injuries came from just being asked to do so much all the time. And I think with less on his shoulders,
I think it's just because of his immune system is that of what's the tweet, a medieval peasant. Seems like half of these games he's missed, he's just got an illness. I think he just needs to take more vitamins.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'll give you my pitch for the Ravens being fantastic.
Let's do it.
This team was 10-7 last year. Keep in mind, Tyler Huntley came in back half,
and Anthony Brown. I saw it,
and so I mean, there's a lot of like rough quarterback play.
Yeah,
this team also almost beat the Bengals in the playoffs with Huntley. So that's kind of the baseline we're working from. Once they got Roquan, they had a top 5 defense pretty much, and they're bringing almost everybody back outside of Campbell, right? And that's not a departure that they were exactly like not expecting. And also Campbell, he's like 38.
Right.
I think this defense is going to be really, really good again. And I think offensively, the upside is so high. And even if it doesn't work out the way that you expect it to, with like everything just going perfectly, if they were running it back with Greg Roman and I knew Lamar was going to be healthy, I'd have him at 12 wins. And I think their receivers, while I will admit I like what they've got at receiver, I think it's the most upside they've ever had at receiver by a wide margin. Zay Flowers is no sure thing. Odell is no sure thing. Bateman's no sure thing, unfortunately. It's you can't really be like, that's going to be perfect. They're all going to work out. We don't know. But here's the thing, man. Even if they don't all work out, it's still better than what they had. I still think they have a great offensive line. I still think they're going to have a great run game. I still think the tight ends are going to be really, really good. And we know, Georgia last year liked to use a lot of 2 tight end stuff. So I think they're going to see the field a lot. I don't see what's not to like about them. I think they're just going to be a more spread out version that can push down the field more than other Ravens teams. I think they're going to be really good.
Yeah, I think the key will be finding the balance between the old stuff and the new stuff, because you need the old stuff there. Like Greg Roman, for all the shit he gets, was a brilliant run game coordinator, and it's really apparent when you watch him that he did an absolutely beautiful job on that side of the ball. I mean, what do you do if they come out in 13 personnel? It's Pat Ricard and 3 tight ends out there, and there's no running back on the field. Like, what do you think is about to happen?
Yeah.
You don't know. Anything could happen. Is it a pass? Like, Josh Oliver is a good blocker, but he can receive, and so can Mark Andrews, and so can Ricard. And like, you have all these guys, you don't know what the hell is going on. And they'll be, you're trying to read out the option and there's 3 pullers coming at you. They'll pull the center, the backside tackle, and Ricard out there. They'll all be flying like in the opposite direction. And the guy is trying to figure out if Lamar Jackson has the ball or J.K. Dobbins have the ball. I mean, they'll just mash people. It's psychological warfare. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the personnels mean. Like, anything could happen out of anything, really. Like, it's a really, really good running attack. And I think that J.K. Dobbins, I'm excited about him next year. Like, I don't care all the issues that he's had and all the like drama with his injury. When he was running last year, I thought there were several plays where I was like, that's the old J.K. Dobbins. He looked like he had elite balance. He broke plays or continued plays that other running backs just can't do. I thought that he looked agile. Maybe the home run speed not quite there, and maybe who knows if that'll ever come back. But even if it doesn't, like I do think that he showed some elite traits last year and was pretty much efficient on the ground. So like you got to keep that. And a quote that always sticks with me, and I've mentioned it on this podcast before, is Todd Monken saying, "I don't know why they brought me in," because he looked at what this offense was doing with Roman and said, "That's the perfect." Like, what do you do with Pat Ricard now? You know, he's one of the best he's one of the best pound for pound blockers in the league. That's how he's able to be like the only fullback that has a job in the league right now. Is like, he's just that good as a perimeter blocker, right? So it's like, you have this guy and he's really good at this thing. And it's like, if you're going to completely stray from it, like what are you going to do? You know, you've got this guy, you've got this team built to do this thing. You've got this quarterback who's so good with his legs. Like, you have to keep what Roman did to some extent. And you're hoping that Monken can watch enough. The players, there's a lot of continuity. Like, they didn't, outside of the receivers, like everyone there, like Andrews and Lamar and JK and Stanley, they should all kind of know the deal. And so hopefully you can kind of do that and then work in more detailed passing concepts as well. Cause that was always the thing with Roman. He can't be that detailed in the running game and also like be that detailed in the passing game. You'd be the greatest football coach of all time. And it was just a very, very detailed running game and just not a very detailed passing game. They would stack guys up and they'd just have two people running essentially like clear outs. They'd have two wide receivers just running right next to each other. And then they'd basically just be clearing out space for an underneath weapon. And so it's like the running game, but it's passing. Like, there's blockers. They're just running routes real close to each other, and defensive backs have to maneuver around them to get underneath. But that wasn't like, that's kind of Mickey Mouse, you know. It's kind of a Mickey Mouse passing offense, always throwing on the run like that. So there's going to be a big adjustment. There's going to be less of that. There's going to be more straight drop back, and it's a lot to learn quickly. It's an overhaul, and you just hope that it goes smoothly. You hope that they've got the guys and Monken is the right dude and Harbaugh is the right coach to see it through. And I do think they have that. Like, I think that these are all serious people that they've brought in to do this. I think Monken is good at his job. I think that he did a fantastic job at Georgia. And when he was a monster in Tampa Bay, when it comes to passing offenses, he led some pretty crazy results with Jameis and throwing it for 5,000 yards with Jameis. So like, I really think that he knows what he's doing and he's going to be a good hire. And I think he's the guy to blend these things. Injury is really the only thing that I worry about, because you're banking on basically the all injury team. Ronnie Stanley, Lamar is good to miss a handful of games, if not the, entire season. But, he does get banged up over the course of the year. Odell, who knows what he is. Bateman has been hurt through his entire NFL career. And Zay Flowers is pretty small. Like, I think that he could be durable, so that might be unfair. Yeah. But you don't want to have those two. Dobbins is, who knows what he looks like, his type and speed. And his recovery from the injury took a long time. So yeah, that's really what concerns me
too on defense, hasn't he?
I think maybe.
I thought he was, but maybe I'm making that up.
I think if they're even reasonably healthy.
Yeah, I think they could be. You think so? You got him at number 1?
I think it's awfully close. I think you're splitting hairs, but I think
it is so close.
It's so close, dude. I don't know.
They've got so many stars. I could totally see this team in the Super Bowl, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I really think Monken is so good. I think he did so good at Georgia. He was so good for them. And I think the defense is, a lock to be really, really, really good. And even their questionable units, like let's say the receivers, for example, I think they've got real upside, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does the Bengals offensive line have real upside?
Maybe. I think it's
do like the safeties for the Bengals have like real upside? I think they could be okay, but I don't know if they're going to be awesome.
They have upside, right? But they would be awesome right away.
Right.
Yeah. So
you're not banking them to be anything more than like acceptable. And that's what, as a fan, you're hoping for from these units. It's like, let's just get this to okay.
And I think the Bengals,
not expecting absolute greatness, but go ahead, Matt.
I think the Bengals are like one of the least changed teams in the NFL, probably. How many starters are they bringing back? Like 18? It's like everybody, man. They're bringing back everybody, and they were really good, and they almost made it to the Super Bowl. They could have won the Super Bowl, and maybe the right take is that the Ravens are really injury prone. These two teams are about splitting hairs. Go with the Bengals. Maybe that's a correct take.
That's my logic.
I think that's probably
like one is proven and one is unproven. Like one has shown in the last 2 years they deserve to be.
But I don't think the Ravens. If the Ravens had Lamar all last year, which I know I keep saying if they had Lamar last year, they would have been at worst a game away from where the Bengals were. And if they had Lamar last year, they would have beaten the Bengals in the playoffs. I know it.
I agree.
So I think that already the Ravens were right there. I think Lamar is so good. And I think having an offense that spreads out and having receivers that have upside, if that pans out at all, and I really, really think that it will, they're going to be fantastic. They have Super Bowl winning upside easily to me.
I don't disagree at all. I have them at 2, but I don't disagree at all. I did an exercise because one thing that struck me, like when I was at the Super Bowl, is like how obvious it should have been that these were like the 2 best teams in the league. Because you go around and you look at the Eagles and it's like there's Lane Johnson at one podium and Jason Kelsey and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat and Darius Slay and James Reddick. They had the most Pro Bowlers and all pros in the NFL. How about the Chiefs? It's like, oh, here's Chris Jones, here's Patrick Mahomes, here's Travis Kelsey, here's Creed Humphrey, here's here's Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer, really. Here's Andy Reid. So if you were to just think of 15 podium slots and what team could fill them with the most stars, the Ravens are up there like, oh, there's Lamar Jackson. There's Odell Beckham. There's Ronnie Stanley. There's Roquan Smith. There's Marlon Humphrey, and then there's other guys who I think can make that jump. There's, I think, who was I tweeting about? Number 98, Travis Jones. Like he's someone that I think is pretty high upside on their defense. I think Patrick Queen, he's not a good enough number 1, but if he's your second best linebacker, like that's a pretty good spot to be in. I think
pretty solid.
Marcus Williams is a good safety. Kyle Hamilton is a really good player in the slot, like I broke down on the All-22 review. So yeah, it's like this team can fill out a roster of stars. This team can go band for band with any other team in the league, really. And those are the teams you should be betting on, really, is just the ones with the best players. And right now on paper, like kind of the same thing with the Browns, but the Ravens have the results and the history to prove it, right? Like the Ravens are good on paper and they win almost every game Lamar plays in over the course of the last 3 years, like point blank period. They really do. Yeah, I could definitely see them being number 1. But then again, the Bengals have won just about every game Joe Burrow has played in the last 2 years as well.
Here's really what I'm thinking, man. This is like maybe a moment where, like, Lamar has had a very Cam Newton-esque career where it's like really boring offensive coordinator who doesn't call up anything and no receivers ever. And this is like the year where it's like, oh my God, Lamar actually, like, I think Monken is a baller, and I think these receivers are pretty good, man. Like, I know it's a lot of projection, but Andrews is no projection. And likely could very well. It's like you've got a lot of dice rolls. You've got like 4 guys, and you already have Andrew. But you got 4 guys who could be pretty good, and I like all of them. I like Flowers. I like Bateman. I like Odell. I like Likely. So I just see, and the defense is right there too. So I just see the upside being so high for them, and I think the downside is also high for them because you've got Lamar. So unless he gets hurt, which is an if, but unless if he stays healthy, 11, 12 wins is easy for them. And 13, 14, absolutely possible.
Yeah. I think that this is the year that Cam never got, really. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, that's how I view it, man. I think Lamar
he just wants
so
justice for Cam.
Yeah, this is I worry I'm glad to see it happen.
About the corners, like if their corners were so bad a couple years ago, like when Joe Burrow threw 500 yards on him twice, it was like Marlon Humphrey was down. It was a bunch of just terrible players. I think like Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams is better than it was 2 years ago. But if Marlon goes down, it's like, I don't know. It's Jalen Moore, Davis, and
Rock Ya-Sin,
I don't exactly feel that. I don't feel any differently about anybody else in this division, though. Like,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You
fair.
can definitely say the
Bengals,
same thing about the Browns. If Denzel Ward goes down, which he does, right? If Greg Newsome gets hurt frequently,
if Awuzie goes down for the Bengals,
Awuzie was hurt
scary hours, man. The secondary
really
is
bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could pull that card for anyone as far as secondary goes. The big thing for the Ravens is Lamar, and if he can stay healthy, and
he gives you a certain floor.
Yeah, he's just so good.
I just think the Bengals have the Bengals' best players have the fewest ifs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that's there. That is a lock, and that pretty much guarantees you to have a top 5 passing offense in football. Just straight off the bat. And that's just too hard to pass up on, to be that's going to be the best. That's going to be the best team in this division. And there's a world where the Browns will run, and there's a world where Lamar is healthy. And I think it's likely that he is healthy all year. And the Ravens are better than the Bengals, but I know that the Bengals are going to have that. I just know it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the Ravens are more injury prone, but injuries could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Burrow has been injured before, and it's a bad offensive line, and he takes a lot of hits. So, anything could happen. But I don't disagree. I don't think the Bengals are a bad pick. I think they're going to be one game apart. Like someone will have 13, the other will have 14, or someone will have 12, the other will have 13. It's really, really close.
It's gonna be a tight division.
I think it's definitely the Ravens and Bengals out in front. And I think the Ravens, they're building what could be a really powerful super team, I think. But it's just a lot of transition. And so I don't want to get my hopes up too crazy high. Because I could. I really could get
they'll be fine. It will all work out.
I really could get my expectations up super high, but I'm trying to stay calm. I'm trying to say, it's a lot of change for 1 year. It could take some time. Adele is a total question mark. Bateman hasn't really proven, the wide receiver hasn't proven anything yet necessarily. The defense, I feel better about the offense than I don't know if I feel pretty good about both, but the pass rush could be maybe a little bit can they get home with 4 if it's away and Jones and
they'll have a Jabo this year.
Pronounce his name.
They'll have a Jabo.
Pierce I don't care.
Just give up.
However you say it, or a Jabo and Bowser. Yeah. It's a good 4, but there's not really that type of guy where it's he's a TJ Watt. He's a Myles Garrett, and last year they were 27th in pressure rate, it seems like. So that's not good.
But they were top 5 in sacks last year. So
were they really?
Yes, they
were. I'm looking at a 29% pressure rate.
They had 48
they must have
sacks.
just gotten home. That's good then. That's good. That means something was working. But I do worry a little bit about the pass
blitzed
rush,
a lot,
and I worry a little bit about the corner depth.
They had a really high blitz rate, didn't they?
They had a really high rate of weird shit happening in rotations and OA dropping into coverage and Roquan Smith moving all around and being mugged up and going back. Their defensive coordinator McDonald is not afraid to try some stuff.
Yeah.
There's a good mix of everything. They were 14th. They were actually 10th. The only stat that they were top 10 in terms of amount of rushers was 3 rushers. They did that 7% of the time, which was 10th. So that's a couple snaps a game where they were dropping everybody into zone, which is what I'm talking about. And then they were 14th in 4 rushers, 19th in 5 rushers, and 27th in 6 rushers. So nothing that they were necessarily at the top in terms of tendencies. They ran a little bit of everything, which checks out to me.
Somehow they got 48 sacks. What the hell?
They were confusing. They're a confusing defense to go up against. And Hamilton is kind of a freak and Roquan is kind of a freak when you're dealing with them at the underneath. It's kind of muddies things up, and there's usually stunts and some blitzes, or they're dropping 8. It's a frustrating defense to play against. So I think the scheme can overcome a little bit of what could be a talent a lack of talent along the front four potentially compared to other Super Bowl contenders.
Fair enough.
Actually, maybe I should say the Ravens will be number 1. You want to know why?
I'm sticking at number 2 for them, but I don't want to be a Ravens hater.
Because Lamar Jackson wears his Oakleys.
So true.
Yeah, that's right. That's
good.
right.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good because we got the mailbag, and the mailbag is sponsored by Oakley. You should have seen where I was going. No, I actually do. I'm going to keep the Bengals at 1. I just had to play the bit there a little bit. So just before we get into the mailbag, which is sponsored, by the way, by Oakley, so make sure you go out and trust the best in eyewear business with your summer fit this year. Oakley's not only the best looking eyewear on the market, but also the best quality. So get on over to Oakley.com to snag a pair today. That is Oakley.com. Just to wrap up the rankings of the AFC North before we get into the mailbag, though, Theo and I had the exact same order, which was Bengals at 1, Ravens at 2, Browns at 3, Steelers at 4. And then Matt had the only switch, which I figured one of us would, which is Ravens at 1 instead of Bengals.
I'm riding with Lamar.
That's fair. That's a decent person.
He wears the Oakleys,
He does. He's an Oakley king.
He's an Oakley king.
And then the Bengals, I don't want to give too much. I think Bengals fans should know what to expect at this point. I think that there's not too much going to change. Luana Rumo stayed on. Blaiden, I don't know if you want to talk about the safeties at all, because I know
we've talked about these two damn safeties the Bengals, much on this channel.
If you want to know about the Bengals safeties, I have a video out on. Just go watch.
That's a good thing to say. Yeah, you can watch the video but I just think they're going to be good. I think the results are real. Burrow and Chase and Higgins are good. I think that the offensive line will be better just because, it's another year for the young guys like Volson to grow. And they've added Orlando Brown, who is better than Jonah Williams. I will say that. I think Jonah Williams is pretty trash. And I think La'el Collins is extra trash. So at least last year they were.
I don't think Collins isn't going to start this year.
Oh, he better not. He was a complete disaster last season. They literally had him split out wide. And I think the logic was if we split him farther from the other offensive linemen, the edge rusher will have longer to go to get to the quarterback. And that fraction of a second is more valuable than anything La'el Collins can do. I think that was their logic. We're we'll just put the tackle really far away. So it's just a longer path for the edge rusher to get there. It was really bad. So, I think that we can expect, a pretty, borderline top 10 type of defense and a potentially top 5 type of offense. And
2 same coordinators, 18 to 22 starters coming back. I think Orlando Brown I think Orlando Brown will be an upgrade, but nothing game-changing, life-changing. Mm-hmm. Maybe more continuity for the offensive line will be good.
And maybe a bit better in the running game or powerful in the running game.
That's the other thing.
He was not super great in pass pro last year, but neither was Jonah Williams. So
that's the only thing we didn't really talk about with the Bengals is how their run game could look, because there's a world where Mixon, I know they're trying to get Mixon to take a pay cut, or they'll just straight up release him.
Mixon should be thankful for that he's playing in this league at all, to be completely honest. I don't know how he hasn't been kicked out yet. I don't know. Was it 2 different gun things this offseason? And already he had got caught on camera in HD, punching a girl before this even happened. So he should, if he's not kicked out of the league, he should suit up and play for any amount of money, because it's a miracle for him that he is still there.
I know. I was reading the Bengals are trying to get this deal done ASAP, but they're prepared to let him go. So.
We must be underrating him in the top 10 lists, because he must be a top 10 running back to stick around through all this.
I guess so, man.
So what's the mailbag?
The mailbag questions. First one is from Tyrone Kaysen on Twitter. And if you guys want to be involved in these mailbag questions, make sure you follow us at StayHotPod on Twitter. This one's from Tyrone Kaysen, where he says, assuming they're in the position to take a top quarterback in the draft, so I assume that's top 5, maybe top 10. If Justin Fields plays similarly to last year, should the Bears move on, or should they hold out another season?
I think if you
Depends on
don't
the
see
QB.
any, I think if it depends on the growth of, if he doesn't grow at all and it looks the exact same as last year, you should move on. I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you get DJ Moore and the quarterback doesn't get any better, then it's not a wide receiver problem. Really, it's a quarterback problem. Like I get that it's not a perfect receiving core still or offensive line, but you got to keep getting better. So if he's not better and it's still like a bottom 5 passing attack, like, yeah, absolutely. Drafting someone is completely understandable. And it just depends on how good he looks in the running game and who the quarterbacks are to see if like you could even fathom bringing Fields back for another year. In that case, if you don't like anybody after, like, say they have pick 5 and it's May and Williams off the board.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Then maybe you can,
I think if by year 3 you're not showing growth, that you're done as a QB. I think that's true for every single quarterback ever. So
right, Tua. It was year 3 for Tua, correct? It was year 3 for Hurts.
Yep, it's like year 3. You gotta at least be pointing in the right direction.
Yeah,
a serious
I guess
amount.
Daniel Jones is the only one who, I think this was year 4 when he kind of had his breakout, right? Or was it year 5? I don't know.
You can argue that they should have moved on before, because that makes the whole like contract process afterwards. Like if he does eventually get to a point where he's serviceable, it's like, oh, well, now you have to.
And they didn't ever get him a DJ Moore unless DJ Moore turns out to be like Kenny Galladay. It's not like they brought in, like, Galladay was clearly the problem. He was trash. So it's like you could kind of run it back with Daniel Jones based on like, well, we haven't given him a fair shot here, which I guess maybe you could still say because we've fucked up the receiver position and we fucked up the head coach.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think the Bears can say the same because everybody's excited about the DJ Moore addition. And I don't think their coaching staff is as bad as the Jason Garrett, Joe Judge, or whatever the hell they were doing.
Oh my God.
So it's probably year 3 here.
All right. Well, next we have one more question from I Love Dak 69 on Twitter. And all they have to ask is
it misinformation?
It's just how was Matt's
at
birthday?
Everybody? Oh, okay.
Are you talking about the chalkboard?
Yes. The I Love Dak notification is never real.
It feeds families. No, his only question is how was Matt's birthday?
It was pretty good. I kind of already covered this.
In the beginning,
this at
we
the
did.
top.
But July 4th birthday is always fun. There's always something to do. So, and we celebrated before on the weekend.
Yeah.
So
didn't get on the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. We'll get it next time.
There's more time.
There is more time because we'll be going back to Murphy's.
We will.
But I think that's all we've got. We'll make sure to get through all these divisions before week 1. Today was AFC North. So let us know what division you want us to hit next. And until then, thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.